So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, based on the time zones you all are coming from. So my name is 𝐑𝐨𝐿, and I have been working in this IT domain for around 14 years now. So as a part of our today's session, we are going to focus on the concepts of SQL for data science, how exactly we can make use of SQL, and how it is important for any data science domain. So as a part of today's agenda, we are going to have a discussion on data science. Why is SQL needed for data science? And what is SQL and the basics of SQL? Now, we are not going to dive deeper into the advanced level. We are going to cover the basics or we can say fundamentals of SQL, as this is the fundamentals class. So we'll be talking about the advanced level as we proceed further. So first of all, if we talk about data science, then data science is simply the art of learning, okay, what exactly data is and how we can get the meaningful insight from any given data sets here. So that is what we mean by data science. It's simply studying the current data, and based on the data here, we are going to find out what exactly is going to be the most probable outcome in the coming days, and that will be the highest form of, we can say, accuracy. And if we talk about the SQL, then SQL has been one of the core languages needed, or we can say used, for manipulating databases here. So SQL has been one of the core languages required for processing data sets and for operating relational database components. And why that exactly it is needed in data science? Because data science involves extracting, processing, and analyzing tons of data. And at present, what we need are tools that can be used to store, manage, and process this vast amount of data that we have the access to. So SQL can be used to store, access, and even extract information. That means we can use it to perform all the CRUD operations that we have, and that too in massive amounts, in order to carry out the whole data science process more smoothly. Since multiple developers, they are already familiar with this particular language, so they get familiar with how the entire process should be and how exactly it has to be updated. So it becomes easier for them to work on data science components. So if we talk about SQL, so SQL here is basically what? The structured query language, which is focused on manipulation of the relational databases. For example, if we talk about relational database, then we have data stored in the format of rows and tables, where we can interpret that by using the different operations that we have. For example, if you are looking to update the entries in the tables, then we can make use of SQL. We are looking to perform some changes, or we can say perform the editing, or we want to perform the deletion of the items, we want to update the items. So all the CRUD operations that we have, CRUD means create, read, update, delete. You want to extract this information. So everything is possible by using the database service here, and that goes by the name of MySQL. So there are multiple database engines available. So MySQL is one of the database engine, one of the most popular database engine out there that we can use for data manipulation. And RDBMS is basically a data management system where data is stored into different tables, as we discussed, in terms of rows and columns. And the relations are established among different data variables by using the primary keys and the other components here step by step. So MySQL has been one of the most popular database engine because of multiple reasons. First of all, it is open source. That means there is no licensing involved here. Then it supports the multiple programming interfaces. So we have the access to the CLI. We can access it by using the GUI method as well. And we do have the support to large databases where we can create a good number of database on a single instance, as long as we have the storage available. So we don't have a limitation of deploying just a single database on an instance like we have in Oracle database engine. So we don't have a limitation like that. And then it is customizable so that we can customize it based on the requirement. Now, in terms of the data types, there are multiple data types available in MySQL. Like we have numeric, we can go for character string, for bit string, for the Boolean, where we want to check for a given value if it is true or not. Then we have for date time, timestamp, and the interval. All right, then so as a part of the structured training that we can get in Edureka is, first of all, you are going to have a discussion on Python, like having a complete hands-on on how Python is structured. And then in terms here, you're going to get this complete sequence and file component here. Then we are going to learn on the functions, on oops, modules, errors, and exception. Then you're going to get the discussion done on NumPy, Pandas, and Matplotlib. Then you'll be having the access to data manipulation, how we can manipulate the data set. Then working on machine learning by Python, and then the association rules filing and the recommendation system that we can go ahead and create. And then we have the reinforcement learning, where we can use it for training the entire system here. And then towards the end, we have time series analysis as a complete path that we can go ahead and follow. Towards the end, we can focus on model selection boosting to improvise the performance. So if you talk about the basics of SQL, then again, we can simply create the database, we can create a table, we can insert the entries into the table, we can perform the, we can say update by selecting the data in the given table and again, deleting and dropping it as well. So let's do one thing. First of all, let's get connected to a database that we had deployed in one of the cloud platforms. So right now we have used our AWS Cloud to deploy a database instance running MySQL database engine. And by using one of the database client, we are going to get connected to it. So here we are going to get connected to a remote database engine which we had deployed on AWS. And for that, we are going to make use of different clients. For example, if you are comfortable working with, let's say, if we are deployed, suppose MySQL, so you can either use MySQL Workbench, or you can go ahead and make use of 𝐻𝐵SQL as well. You can use the MySQL Workbench as well, like we have MySQL Workbench. If you want to get connected to a single platform through which we can get connected to multiple database sources, then you can also make use of tools like we have dbeaver. So dbeaver is again one of the most popular database engines out there, which we can use to get connected to MySQL, Postgre, SQLite, Oracle, Teradata, MS Access. That means to almost all the popular database engines out there, we can use it to get connected to them. So this is what we can define as a part of this setup. So here we can go ahead and click on download. So basically here we can choose to go ahead and go for the Windows or the Mac OS based on the system that you have. Let me share this URL with you all so you can use it as a reference. I've shared this in the chat window so you can all use it as a reference here. And to get connected, so we can open up this dbeaver client if we have. So the best part of dbeaver is it is offered as a part of the free tier access. That means we can use it to get connected to the database that we have. So there is no licensing involved here. Now, this is how the platform for dbeaver looks like, where we can start creating a new database from scratch, and then we can start getting connected to any remote database, and then we can view the data, we can perform all the CRUD operations we want. So what we can do is we can go ahead and click on this option which says new database connection, and here we can click on, here we can choose the database engine that we want to get connected to. For example, here we want to set up a connection to MySQL engine. So we have the database that we have the access to is running on top of MySQL database engine only. And here we can click on next. Now in here we can define the server host. So right now we want to get connected to a remote database engine. So we do have the endpoint that we can go ahead and get the access to. So this is the endpoint of our database engine that we want to get connected to. We have defined this on port 80 itself. So we have defined this on port 80 on port 3306. So this is a default port for MySQL, just like we have a default port for Oracle, like we have 1521. So in case this port is already occupied, then we can define a different port whenever we are going to set up the database engine. And then we can define database name in case this is a production level database and now we want to get connected to it. Then we can define the exact database available in this instance. We can have multiple databases available in a given system. We can easily do that. Then we have username. So username is going to be set. So at the time of deploying this database instance, we had defined the username as admin. And here we can set the password. We can test the connection if the credentials are correct. If the port has been opened up, then we would be able to get connected. If not, then we have to check the firewall for the database instance that we are trying to get connected to. The firewall should allow the access to the given port. It may take a while. All right, so for this given database, the public accessibility has been set to off. So we have to turn it back on. Just a minute, because we have modified it, so it may take a couple of minutes for the connection to be refreshed. Once it is done, then we would be able to get connected. All right, so the connection has been established. So now we can open up this database instances. So this is the default database instance that we have, having default structure defined. So right now, since this is a blank database, so we don't have any active database instance up and running. So whenever we are going to work on this database-based GUI platform, either we can start manipulating the entire database by using the GUI section here, like we have the create new database. So once we click on create new, so what exactly is happening in the backend? The SQL script is being run, but again, by using the GUI platform, we are able to create a database for us. For example, let's say here we want to create a database by the name of, suppose it's a customers. Then we can see our database by the name of customers is going to be created. So we can double click on this database and we can see the complete UI has been opened up. If we want to create tables, we can right click here, click on create new tables. Suppose here we want to define table for, let's say here we have for, let's suppose for the info. And then within this, we can create a new column, right click here, click on create new column. Suppose here we want to define a column name, suppose as, let's say here we have customer underscore name. Then we can define the data type, whether we want this one to be based on varchar as in the string value or date time, double, float. So for name, it is going to be for varchar, and then we can click on OK. Again, we can define new column. Suppose this is going to be for customer age. So here we have a customer age. We want this one to be not be a part of varchar. We want this to be part of the, let's say, the date, boolean, or suppose a simple integer. We can click on OK. And now once we click on save all, so again at the end, the SQL script itself is going to be created here. Then only it is going to be updated. So the main beauty of these different platforms is we can either use this entire GUI, or we can simply use the SQL editor where we can start typing the scripts directly. So what we're doing here, we're simply trying to generate the script directly here. For example, let's say our goal is to create a database. Our goal is to create a database. So we can simply run a script here. For example, here we can define create database. And here we can define name. Suppose here we want to create a database by the name of orders. Then we can define the name as orders. And then if you want to start using this database, then we can simply use the command as use orders in case you want to make use of this database that we are going to create here. So this is simply going to create the database here, whatever name we had defined here. And then once we define a database, so as you can see here, our database with the name of orders have been successfully created. This query has been executed. Next, if you want to create a table within the given database here, so first of all, if you want to use a given database, then we can define use. Suppose here we want to run all the queries on orders table that we have defined. We can use orders. So we can switch to orders, and then we can start creating tables within the given query here. So for example, now if you want to create a database here, so what we can do is we can go ahead and run the program as suppose create table. Let's suppose here we want to create a table for new orders. So here we can define new orders as what? The name of the table that we want to create. and then we can define the name and the data type of the variables as in the columns. First of all, we need to call the column suppose as customer. Suppose here we can define customer underscore name, and suppose we want this one to be a varchar. Suppose varchar of having suppose 50 characters. We can define that varchar and that is for 50. Then we can add a comma. Then suppose next we want to have, let's say, SKU for the item being added. So again, we want this one to be varchar having suppose as 50 characters. Then again, we can define suppose we have price, and we want a price to be part of suppose say double. And so we can, what we're doing here, we are simply defining the values. So we want to have a double or float or whatever values you want to have. Now, once we are done, we can simply go ahead and execute the script here. So now a table by the name of orders table is going to be created within the same orders table that we have defined here. So what we are doing here, we are simply creating a script. We are simply running a script, and based on these scripts only, the data is going to be updated. So now if we refresh our left sidebar, we can see we have orders. Under tables, we have a table that is going to be created with the same entries that we defined here. So whatever we do, that is going to be updated, and that's how the entries are going to be there based on whatever we are going to create. That's how it simply works. And now if you want, if in case we have certain entries, or for example, suppose we have certain entries that we need to work upon. So here we can go ahead and define the entries, and they are going to be defined accordingly. That's how it works. And then we want to insert values. So here we can use the insert into the name of the table that we want to define, and then we can define values as per the table structure that we defined here. For example, now we want to run a simple insert into. So here we have insert into. Now we want to insert into new orders, and then we can define whatever value we want to enter. So we have, so under new orders, what we have here, we have customer name, SKU, and the price. Suppose the customer name is going to be Jane, then the SKU is going to be, suppose to say S101, and then the pricing is suppose going to be is what we define suppose as 45.50. So this is the same value, or we can say the same schema set as per the schema set that we have created. So again, this is going to update the values as a part of the schema set here. So whatever we are going to make use of, we have to make sure that we do define the same orders, and we use to define the same table that we have to import. That's how it simply works. So if we have to create the entries, then we have to simply define, okay, the type of entries that we want to create. If it is going to be a string, if it is going to be a we can say default value, and that's how it is going to be updated. So we have simply the double quotes, because we define this one as a part of double quote here. So again, we can see the entry has been done. And once we are done with the entries, to see the entry, what we can do is we can go ahead and make use of a command as select. And suppose we want to select everything from what? From new orders. So whatever entries are done, so we are going to see all the entries from the table returned to us. So now we have two entries for Jane, 2 times we have executed that, and here we have the SQs and the price being returned to us. So this is basically what we can define by using the SQL based structures. So again, a big thank you to you all for joining, everyone, and have a great day ahead. Take care. Bye bye.